working with Joel and Ethan.
Great.
Okay. When I first started working with Joel and Ethan, I think I had 5 weeks, I think, before we shot on Barton Fink, and they brought me in early because we didn't know each other. We'd met, but we hadn't worked together. And after that, they would bring me in regularly that amount of time or even more. And I said, I really want to be involved in location scouts, you know, and everything from the very start. I think that's really important. But, you know, the way you work with the director is, I mean, directors want something different from a cinematographer. I mean, you know, depending on their you know, experience or whatever. I mean, I have worked with a director who said, look, I know nothing about the camera or where to put it. He said, you will be doing that. I really want to work with the actors, and you just, you know, tell me what you think the best way of approaching it is. And I said, well, we'll always talk about the scene before we set the camera, but okay, I understand what you mean. And, you know, other directors are actually quite, you know, they have quite a clear plan of how they want to shoot something.
Setting up communication with
yeah,
them.
it's really the most important thing is finding out how your relationship with a director is going to work. You know, I mean, there's certain projects and certain directors that I've met with and who I really like and admire, but I know I couldn't work with. But one thing, because I operate the camera myself, and some directors don't like their cinematographer operating. And some directors like to operate themselves. There's one in particular who is somebody, you know, I know quite well, but I couldn't work with him because he likes to operate the camera.
So you would never make a film without operating yourself?
I wouldn't say never, but the only time I tried that, it didn't work and I left the project. No, I'm.
So maybe shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much for me is about that relationship with the camera and the image and just finding the shot. It's that personal connection to the frame. You know, you take that away and you know, I'm not somebody who can sit on a monitor and just watch somebody else do it. I can't, yeah, I can't do it.
But it's different for different people, because remember in the podcast, when we were doing the podcast, we asked a lot of cinematographers, if you had to give up one, would it be operating or would it be lighting? And interestingly enough, most of them said lighting, although a few people said, no, I'd give up operating. But it seems like a lot of them really need to operate too.
Yeah.
A very specific question from our students. Technical question. Do you think the vertical approach that we are experiencing in our everyday life through social media and let's say the fact that we always are with our phones in our hands that makes us see everything in vertical, is it or will someday, in your opinion, influence the way we think and see cinema, audiovisual?
I think there's so many other things going on that are influencing us in a very bad way. I'm not sure whether...
non sentono su Facebook, si stanno lamentando tutti. Ragazzi.
Sorry, just 1 second, we have dropped the audio.
No, ce l'abbiamo noi, non vi preoccupate.
Sorry, just 1 second.
Che casino, che casino. Niente, check videocamera connection. Tu lo senti lui?
No, siamo qua.
Not that you would know, but I'm on social media. When I do,
Dimmi di parlare. Stanno parlando.
it's the vertical of.
Sentiamo la gatta.
But no, it wouldn't have, because you don't get it.
Come li sento io, li senti tu.
Non so che dire, ragazzi.
You do know we have,
Non guardare me, Seba, io non so neanche di cosa stiamo parlando. Io vedo loro che stanno ridendo perché dicono... Sì.
Ragazzi. Prima si sentiva il microfono funziona. Chiedi se ci sento.
Allora, do you hear us?
yeah, yeah.
We do, yeah.
Now I'm so sorry. If you could go again on these very specific technical questions about verticality.
That you think
Yeah.
other things are changing in movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the least, verticality is the least of our worries. I worry for cinema, full stop, you know, whatever frame it might be. I think the way we are entertained and stimulated is changing beyond belief. And I don't think anybody really knows where we're heading. I have fairly negative view of where cinemas is and where it's going right now. So, and it's got nothing to do with whether it's a vertical image or not.
What is your process of style research in a project? I mean, do you work looking for references in photography, in other art forms?
Depending on the project, you kind of do, you know, the director maybe will come with a number of references, and the production designer will come with a lot of references, and then I'll certainly find references, but they're really conversation starters. There's not like, you don't like get an image and say, we want to reconstruct that. It's not like Jeffrey Crutzen, you know, we're not constructing something specific. We're looking at something that has an emotional kind of probably connection. Now, whether that's the kind of the lens length, the kind of framing, whether it's the use of color. I mean, as recently showing a director the work of Harry Griart, the Belgian photographer, who does, in my mind, some of the best color work of anybody. And it's just the particular sort of shades and combinations of color. So, you know, you find an image and say, this feels kind of right, you know. I mean, I could take a number of Edward Munch paintings and say this feels right, but it wouldn't really directly relate to a visual image that we were trying to create, you know. It's a mood thing, really.
Most difficult question of all, what would you advise a young cinematographer?
It's very hard. I would, if you were an Italian cinematographer, wannabe, you should watch somebody like, you watch all the films that have been shot by Giuseppe Rotana or Pasquale De Santis, right? Watch what De Santis do. I was just looking the other day. De Santis shot Death in Venice, right? Visconti, Three Brothers for Rossi, 8.5 for Fellini, and Illustrious Corpses for Rossi. That's like 4 of the greatest films ever made, but they don't look the same. The same person, you see that person, you see the work of the cinematographer, you see that personality in, obviously with the director, but you can feel the man behind the images, but they don't look the same. The films look very different. And now, I'm not saying anybody should copy Pasquale at all, or any other cinematographer. What I'm saying is there's a certain sensibility that everybody has. And that's what you want to find as an individual. Because there's a million great cinematographers out there that can light fantastically. You put up a big soft source and it will look wonderful. But I think there's very few that really connect, like he did, or the Russian cinematographer Mikhail Krichman right now. I mean, the images he produces are kind of personal in a way. It's his and the director's way of seeing something. It's not trying to copy somebody else. That's all I would say, trying to develop your own sensibility, really.
So I would like, since we have here some of our students, I would like to see if any of them want to come and ask directly a question. Non sto chiedendo a te nello specifico, sto chiedendo a tutti se lo volete, visto che me l'avete chiesto voi.
Please.
I will.
They wouldn't let this be opened.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hello, hi.
Hello, good morning. I'm apologizing for all the technical issues that we had before by even my colleagues here. A simple question. A beautiful mind made my childhood, and so I'm here just to ask you, was it difficult to combine scientific vision to a heart-moving film?
Yeah,
That was actually. It was interesting, again, working with Ron on that, because some things in the script that were visualizing Nash's kind of way of seeing, way of doing his mathematics, some of them I felt were very overworked. And I in discussions with Ron, we felt the film wanted a reality. It didn't want to go off into these too many kind of fanciful, effects driven kind of, so we wanted to ground it in a kind of reality. So the sort of scenes, I can't remember it very well, frankly, it was a long time ago.
all those numbers.
But the numbers, it's one. But then one time Nash is going into a forest and it goes into a house, and it's, I remember in the script, it was so over the top in terms of telling the story, and we wanted to bring it all down. So the audience wondered if actually what they're seeing was actually there, in the same way as Nash didn't know the difference between reality and his own fantasies. So I think there's a balance there. There was another film I worked on, which was in a way similar. It was about a boxer, and he was in jail, and he was going kind of quite a little bit mad. And again, in the script, there was all this kind of fancy kind of madness, and instead I was working with Norman Jewison on this film. Instead, we just had the same character played by Denzel Washington play himself. He had a conversation with himself, and both were there in the, you had mostly singles, in like single shots of him in a different place, as though he was talking to himself. And I thought that worked so well. It's often you try too hard to make something, you know what I mean? And I think you disconnect the audience in a way.
So, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
But that's part of what prep is too, is to determine what the language of the script is. So you start with a script, but then during prep, you're talking about it back and forth and deciding, oh yeah, this isn't a movie with a lot of movement, or this is, or we have to ground it here. So it's all of those kind of fine tuning of what the movie actually is that happens during prep.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Go on, cheers.
Bye. Hi there. Hello.
Hi.
connecting to the question I asked before, how do you think it has changed the pathway to become a DoP nowadays compared to when you started?
Well, I think there's so much more media out there, isn't there? There's so much more, you know,
True.
so many more things being made. And when I was starting in the UK, it was a very, very small feature industry. And what was being made for TV was being made in-house by the BBC or whatever. And my way in was to start shooting documentaries and then just wait for a break to do I did some TV drama. And, you know, it was kind of difficult to actually get something to show because, you know, catch-22. I think there's so much. I think the problem now is it's almost too easy to get something to shoot. There's so much of it. And like I was saying earlier, a lot of it is a really high standard. I got to say, I don't find a lot of it has a personality. I think it's incredibly well done technically. But, you know, I'm sure you're the same. If you see a movie like that Polish film Ida, for instance, I mean, small black and white film, suddenly there was something about that struck you. And that was like, there was a personal vision behind it and a way of telling a story that was kind of like, whoa, that's really interesting, you know? And most of the work you see is kind of, it could have been done by many, many different people. So it's hard when you get the opportunity. I think you've got to, I don't know, express it from your own perspective, give it something that is of you. But how you get that opportunity, I say the world is so different now from when I began. I mean, I went to film school. I don't think I would have ever got anywhere near the film industry if I hadn't gone to film school. So to me, that was a great way of starting. But I know there's a lot of people have got in the business in various different ways.
You make connections.
Yeah, connections. I wish I had made more connections when I was younger. You know, no, it's hard for me to give advice the way the world is so different now. You know.
Thank you so much.
Oh, didn't I?
Yeah.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Hi. I wanted to ask you, like, which is your relationship with music, and if you ever need it when you're shooting a movie or taking a picture.
No, I mean, I love music, but you might not like the music I like. But no, I love music. I don't go around with headphones on or anything. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I love music. I love Van Morrison. I love Townes Van Zandt. I love Meatloaf.
You don't often have music on the set, even though they're going to compose for it. Oftentimes the composition comes later. And even when they're working on it at the same time, you might hear it, you know, the director will say, oh, listen to this, but never while you're shooting. No. Because you're just focusing on what you're doing.
I mean, it's good. Sorry about that. We're all getting, it'll go, there we are. It's good to know. I mean, if a director has a certain kind of music in mind before you start shooting, it's good to hear it, because again, it gives you more information about the feeling of the piece. When we were in prep on, for instance, on No Country for Old Men, Joel and Ethan said, well, we better let you know there's not going to be any music at all in this film, nothing at all. And that was kind of informative, because it made you think about where sound would come in and how the images could reflect, you know, whether the wind was blowing the sand in the foreground or the movement of the grasses, or what natural sounds would accompany the images, you know. But I don't listen to music on set or anything like that myself.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Hello, thank you for the masterclass. I had a question on if your way of working changed once you switched to digital, and what's the relationship with the idea team?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose some people think I switched to digital more quickly than others, but I don't feel I did. I mean, I just waited until I felt that there were more advantages of shooting digitally than there were shooting on film. My relationship with the DIT was it's kind of straightforward, really. I mean, I don't do much on set. I still work as if I was shooting film. So I tried to produce the image in camera that as close to the final thing as I want. I mean, obviously there's enormous advantages now that if you want to change the contrast a little bit of an image, you can do it at a DIT station. You can see it if you've got a certain color combination that's a bit extreme, you can play that down. But I rarely do anything on set. Because I rarely do anything in the DI suite
because you try and shoot it the way that you want it.
Yeah.
So when we work with a new DIT, we have to explain all this to them, because a lot of DITs think, oh, we're setting the looks. Oh, I'm setting the LUTs. None of that.
Funny that.
They're there to back us up technically. And they do, and they're great.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great tool, a great advantage, but I don't like changing much from what's actually in front of the lens. I don't like that way of working.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
We have time for one last question, yes?
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you
Hi.
for being here. I want to
Sure.
personally thank you because every morning of the mission, I was listening to your podcast, Tim Deakins, on Apple Podcast. So it really helped me focus on composition and light, especially the first episodes. And when I got in the school, it took just a couple of days for us to receive the book Byways, and for me it was a huge revelation, because I used to make questions to myself. Who knows what personally drives Roger Deakins to develop his unique style? And for me, it was a huge opportunity to see your work, as for many fellow students. And my question is, do you usually go back to your work and try to analyze the instinctive pattern that develops in your life in terms of connection between light, composition, and narrative results, narrative qualities of pictures, and then transfer them to the movies? Do you think there's a useful aspect in going back to your still photography and try to transfer the qualities, the composition, the natural aspects that you capture in your movies? Or do you think it's very separate?
I kind of think it's the same sensibility, but I don't. It was interesting going back to the photographs doing the book, because it was interesting to see that there was a direct connection between the first photograph I ever took and the one I took only a few months previous. It felt to me that I had not changed much, and as I said earlier, that my sensibility is very much the same as it was when I was in my early 20s. I don't often revisit things. I mean, sometimes I'll go back and watch a movie, and sometimes you're doing a new transfer of a movie, like we did 1984, only maybe a year ago or something. And it's sometimes really quite revealing to see what you did previously. But I don't really like, I wouldn't say I deliberately don't revisit things, but I'm more interested in what I'm doing now or what I want to do than what I have done. But I say it was interesting to revisit the images for the book and just see how they all had a similar kind of sensibility. But part of the reason for doing the book is I just wanted to start again. I'm still taking photographs, and I've actually, you know, I'm actually more interested in taking photographs now than I have been for many years, because I go hot and cold about it depending on how much work I'm doing. So yeah.
Trying to separate from the past and just pushing forward your style, looking for new stuff. Don't be too influenced from the past.
Yeah, and but I'm also not aware of style as you're kind of implying. You know, I mean, in film, you know, you read a script and you relate to it emotionally, and you get a feeling that translates into sort of a visual kind of language when you work with a director, and it gradually something kind of happens. You know, I mean, the look of 1917 doesn't really bear much relationship to Blade Runner or No Country or whatever before, but I mean, there's a similar sensibility, I think, just in terms of the frame and the way use of shadows and whatever. But I mean, you know, the film we've started prep on now is going to be very different to any other. That's the kind of joy of doing the job, really, you know.
Right. Every movie is a whole different project. So
I think it is, you know. I was always one of my favorite cinematographers was Conrad Hall, who I was lucky enough to meet, and we were kind of good friends. And I always study his work. I don't look at my own. I study like his work. Oh, I just said Pasqualino de Santis or something like that. And you see the same person in each of those films, and yet they're so different. And that's, you know, that's what's interesting to me, really. It's to have the ability to be a chameleon in a way, depending on the project, you know?
I see. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I would like to ask a very final question. First of all, thank you so much for your work. I think your work is an inspiration for everyone in front of me here, and I think all over the world. So thank you.
Thank you.
So between us, we work together every day. Like we are classmates and we are good friends, and we know that on set we can reach levels of stress, tension. So I'm going to ask you something personal to both of you, because I'm interested to know, how do you guys cope with tension, and how do you help each other? How is it to be working together as a couple, and how do you do it over the years?
I think one good thing is just last week, one person gets to vent one day, and then the other one should be cheerful. And then the next one, so we don't descend down in that hole. So it's just figuring out who needs the most help that week and who's going to be the cheerful one.
It's it can be very, very stressful job on certain films. It can be incredibly intensely stressful. You know, it's not brain surgery, but I mean, if you care about it, you stress about it, and it's great just being able to share those things together and overcome the challenges together. I mean, that's why we work together so well, I think.
And also it's kind of when you're working with someone else like we do, you know that other person has your back. So there's so much to go through and so much that could fall through the cracks, but much less will fall through the cracks if you do it as a team. It's really good. And also sometimes one person communicates better
Yeah.
with one person than I can.
She's very good communicator. I just like to be behind the camera. Just leave me alone. You know, no, I don't like talking about production ever. No, I mean, I'm being a bit facetious, but no, I find I get very caught up in my work, and it's you know, it's not your whole life, you know. Sometimes it's good to know that there's something else. It's not the be all and end all of what you do, you know. Sometimes you can get too stressed out, and that stops you being you and doing the work you really could do, you know?
Exactly.
Thank you. I will turn the laptop so you can actually see who's here today.
Oh, good. Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Open.
Yeah, right.
Oh, look at that. Hi, everyone. Hi.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much for this.
All right.
Thank you.
Pleasure. You all take care. Good luck.
Thank you, Roger.
We hope
Bye.
have a chance to have you here live in Rome someday soon.
Yes.
When the pandemic is over.
Well, that would be fun.
Up for it.
Okay.
Okay. Take
All
care.
right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Fai tu? No. Veramente.
Ciao.